Carnival Cruise Line still has cruises scheduled for April. We've seen Royal Caribbean say it's going to extend its voluntary suspension of service all the way to May, but Carnival is waiting until this Friday afternoon to make a decision. Let's talk about it today in the La Lita Loca Cruise Show. Carnival Cruise Lines, will they cruise or will they cancel? And why are they waiting until Friday to let us know? I got some ideas. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the La Lita Loca Cruise Show. I'm your host, Tony. Really glad to have you here. Thanks for spending some time with us today. If you enjoy cruising content, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. That way you don't miss out on any of these episodes. Well, of course, it is an interesting time in the world, an interesting time in cruising. I don't even know if interesting is the right word. You could say chaos, you could say uncertain, you could say adventurous. Just depends where your personality is at. But one thing we've been watching closely here, because we're cruising content creators, is the state of cruising. And we saw just a few weeks ago the major cruise lines voluntarily closing down operations for a 30-day time period. That 30 days will end somewhere around April the 11th, April the 12th, and the question is already rising to the top. Will these cruise lines that have voluntarily suspended, will they open back up in the beginning of April? Now, Royal Caribbean already answered that question for suspending their service another 30 days to May the 11th, along with its other companies, Celebrity and Azamara. They're not going to sail in April, already making that decision. We see ports around the world making that decision. Canada closing its cruise ports until July the 1st, and now the Port of Seattle delaying the Alaska cruising season indefinitely for 2020, shutting down their port there. And so the question begs, what's going to happen with the other big cruise lines? Carnival Cruise Lines, Norwegian Cruise Lines, MSC, will they extend their voluntary shutdown into May? Well, Carnival has promised to tell us by March the 27th, which is tomorrow, which happens to be a Friday. Now, it's interesting, if you go on Carnival's website, you really cannot book a cruise in April, which may be some indication as to what their decision is going to be. So if they've already decided to not cruise for the rest of April to extend this voluntary service outage, why wouldn't they just come out and tell us? Well, I've got some ideas about that, and I thought I would take a few moments today to talk about an interesting leadership concept called framing. Now, before you roll your eyes back in your head and you start to click away, let me tell you why this, what sounds like a dry topic called framing, actually matters in the current crisis. First of all, at its simplest, framing is reality creation. Framing an interesting leadership concept that says the influential leader, through their actions and their words, can shape reality. It sounds a little bit like hocus pocus, but we see it playing out during this current crisis. There's been a lot of hubbub lately about the president making the bold statement that by Easter 2020, just 18 short days from now, that the country could be open for business. The experts, the pundits, the man on the street all saying that is a ridiculous statement. But you know who listened to that crazy talk? The economy. The very day that the president came out with hopeful language, no matter how unfeasible it seemed, the economy responded. The stock market responded. You'll see this many times. It's something interesting to look for from an influence and a leadership perspective. There's a lot of politicking going on. There's a lot of partisanship going on. But if you want, be a student of leadership for a while and see how the message changes the perception of things like the economy or the morale of the people. All these things come into play. Look, this is just me as a student of leadership. I believe that the president's saying Easter because he believes that it can positively impact the market, whether or not that's a reasonable date. He's going to get everybody on TV riled up, but if he can move the needle and keep the economy strong, and then when he gets to Easter go, well, yeah, we can't open everything back up, I think he sees it as a no harm, no foul. Now, there can be debate whether or not putting out messages of hope like that can do more harm than good. But as an observer of what's been going on in the world, I really do think it was a move to bolster the market. And it's not the way everybody else leads. But let's look at it in the context of cruise lines. Why would the cruise lines, in the face of this amount of chaos, why would they only voluntarily agree to shut down for 30 days? It seemed crazy at the time from a logical perspective, but again, I think it goes back to this idea of reality creation. It's a lot easier to say, look, face of a crisis, we're going to shut down for 30 days, but we'll be back. Don't worry. We'll be back. We'll be back better, bigger than ever, ready to cruise again. And to some segment of the population, to possibly some of the market segments of the population, the economy drivers, they go, okay, well, cool. It's only 30 days. Very nice. And then you wait 3 weeks and then you have to adjust the message. Look, it didn't get any better in the last 3 weeks. Now we're going to have to close down for another 30 days, but we'll be back. It's all about influence. It's all about framing. So why would Carnival wait until Friday afternoon to announce a decision that's already known? The interesting thing to me about the concept of framing from an influence and leadership perspective is there is a fine line that the leader has to walk. They have to walk the fine line between reasonable reality, hope creation versus straight up emotional manipulation. And great leaders are the ones that can strike that balance where they can inspire people, where they can move the needle in positive ways without bringing despair. And I think every leader has to walk that line. It's a challenging situation right now, a time where more and more people are losing their jobs in huge numbers, where in a few weeks there's going to be some question as to whether or not people have money to pay their bills. The challenge for leadership is enormous. They somehow have to be able to influence things like the market. Words matter when it comes to the economy. It is wild that words have such an impact over the market, that stories have so much of an impact over markets. But it's true. Markets are not completely data-driven. You've got to work on this. You got to look for it when you're watching the news. Markets, economies are story-driven. Positive story can affect markets in a positive way, and negative stories can affect markets in a negative way. And so what I think that you're seeing from leadership is walking that fine line between dealing with the despair of the reality of what's going on and also bringing forth a hopeful message. Even though that message seems illogical and unreasonable, it is those hopes that hopefully boost the morale of the people. And more importantly, I would think to the leaders right now, how do you keep an economy strong in a time where things are shutting down? I think that's what you're seeing. And look, I don't have a political dog in this hunt, so I'm not trying to decide whose side's right, whose side's wrong. Should you be pro this, not pro this? I'm looking at it from a leadership perspective. This is a crisis that has really challenged leaders on every facet. I watch a lot of these state governors talk about what they're doing in their state. I watch the federal briefings, and I'm looking for two things. I'm looking for how we keep people confident about finances and about the economy, and then also how are we keeping people up in their morale as we're asking them to go home and isolate. Again, it's a challenge unfaced by many leaders, at least in my lifetime, and it will continue to play out. Did I answer the question about why Carnival is waiting until Friday to make the announcement? I will answer that question, but I do want to say, if this concept of framing it in the context of leadership and influence, if you're interested in that, a great book that I've read multiple times as part of studies, and then just casually, is called The Art of Framing by Gail Fairhurst. Fascinating read, not that complicated, but really an interesting idea of how people of influence, people that other people listen to, can just with their words change emotions, change physical things in the world. It's like voodoo magic, but it's evident, and when you start looking for it, you see it everywhere. So why is Carnival waiting till Friday afternoon? I think it's a stock thing, honestly. I think they want the market to close strong. There's been some good signals throughout the week. The president mentioned the cruise lines a couple times as places that the United States government should help financially. Those are signals that are signaling the market, and you see the stock respond this week. So I think Carnival waiting till the end of the stock cycle this Friday to make an announcement that could be perceived as negative, another 30 days of shutdown. I think they're waiting until Friday to make that announcement so they can protect the gains that they've seen in the stock price this week. You can't be naive and not understand that there is a dance that goes on between the economy and between people. And you're going to see it play out as leaders try to lead through this crisis. Interesting stuff. I hope you found the information helpful or interesting. If so, please support the channel by hitting the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. This is Tony with the La Lita Loca Crew Show. And until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.